Hello everyone. So in this video we are going to learn about automated testing in Drupal. We will learn how to configure it in fresh Drupal environment, PHPUnit. We will see how many types or what all types of tests are there in Drupal. We will run tests. We will then create tests and will pass the test, fail the test, and on failing we will analyze why the tests are failing. So let's start. For configuring or running PHP tests in Drupal, we must have few dependencies installed. So these dependencies are PHP, PHPUnit, this, Behead, and Symfony. So for that, let's install. I am putting it under dev section of my composer. So let's copy the dependency name, and I must have this, this, and this. Let's run it. Okay, let me see my composer.json file. You can see all the packages are specified in the required dev section of my composer. So the next step is to now configure the php.xml file, which is the file Drupal uses to look for the information about PHPUnit, like where it is installed and what is the so PHPUnit is going to use that file to run the tests. So we can find that file inside the core directory of our project, and we would see a file called phpunit.xml.distribution dist. Copy this file and paste over here. Either you can paste over here or you can paste over here. So let's start with uh, copying this file. So copy, let me clear this first. Copy uh, core phpunit phpunit.xml. Sorry, core phpunit.xml. Now let's see if we have any file here. We have copied it. Okay, so what do we have to do now? We have to configure certain values here. First, this is my site. So this is the URL of my site, and I have to set the simple text base URL. I'm going to paste over here. Then I have to define my credentials for the database. This is and this is, and we have to specify. Okay, then these two are there. So okay, done. Now now last thing is, let me go to my, okay, then this is enough if you want to run unit tests. But if you want to run functional JavaScript tests, then we must set up browser test output directory. For that, um, we have to create a directory. So this is basically to tell tell Drupal that uh, after testing, generate reports in this directory. So we have to create the directory and give right permission to the directory, and then okay, let's go to this command and give appropriate permission. Chmod plus writable site simple browser. I have created, okay, writable. I have assigned writable permission to this directory. So simple test would be able to put the output of our test, functional and functional JavaScript test, to this directory. So now I have to write the exact path over here. For that, I am going to copy the path of my sorry of my project and paste here. So this is the exact path of my project and this browser output file. So now almost everything is done, and let's run the test. Vendor, right, vendor bin php unit, and then we are going to test one core modules, which is datetime unit test. So for that, let's specify. Before that, our phpunit.xml file configuration file is inside core directory. So we have to specify that also. So I am going to set the configuration file location to core, then the test. So let's specify the test with core modules, then datetime test source unit, and let's run it. So it has run all the, so it is running this date field test, and it has returned that total 6 tests performed and 6 tests it has passed, 6 exertion it has passed. So now we know that our PHP unit has been successfully configured. Let's see how many types of tests are there in Drupal. So there are 5 type of tests we can write in Drupal. First is unit tests. So unit tests are, we write unit tests to perform or test against small functionalities or unit wise, where we do not want Drupal installation or environment. We do not want any web browser. So for that type of test, we use implement unit tests. For implementing that, we must extend the base class this, which is unit test base, and the name space for that type of for unit test must be Drupal test, the name of the module, and it should be inside unit directory. um so your module test folder, source folder, and inside unit directory. The second is kernel tests. These are those tests where we want a little of Drupal environment and browsers are not needed. For example, we want a minimal database or services mock files, and for such type of tests we perform kernel tests. For that, we must extend kernel base test class, kernel test base class, and the namespace should be Drupal test your module and then kernel. And the directory where your test should reside in is your module test source folder and kernel folder. Then there is browser tests. Browser tests are those tests which require full Drupal environment and an internal simulated web browser. For example, if you want to check if a certain URL of my module is working against some permission or for specific user, so I need web browser or Drupal environment for that. So for that, we implement browser tests. Next is browser tests with JavaScript. So these type of tests are those tests where we need Drupal environment, full Drupal environment, and then a web browser, but also uh, we want to perform JavaScript related tests or execution. So this will run our tests like we are running in on an actual browser. For this and for both browser tests, for browser tests we extend browser test space. The namespace should be Drupal test your module, and it should be functional, and it should reside in the functional directory of your test folder of your module. For browser tests with JavaScript, they should reside in the functional JavaScript folder of your test folder of your module, and the namespace should be Drupal test your module functional JavaScript, and the base and those such tests should extend the base class web driver test space. Then we have the last type of test, which is build test. So these tests are needed, which should be for example, one needs to test whether whether a composer project, or if we have made any change in the composer and we want to check that that build is working fine against that change or not. So build tests cover those tests or those functionalities which are related to building a Drupal site. So these tests can be written by extending build test space, and the namespace for these tests is Drupal test your module, which is the name of our module, and inside build directory. The location for these tests should be inside the build directory of your test directory of your module. So we have five type of tests: unit, kernel, browser with JavaScript, which is functional JavaScript, and build test. Now let's create or write a test, and from there we would understand more about it. I have created a module called Drupal hacks. Inside this module I have a service called utility. This service implements basic functionalities of Drupal hacks. This has a function called has special character. This function basically check checks if the value passed inside this function contains any special character. If it does, it will return true. If it not, if the value is not containing any special character, it will return false. So okay, so we have we have created a simple function, and now we want to perform unit tests for this, because this is a simple unit and we want to perform test against this. So this is an ideal case of running unit tests. For that I have created for that I have created a class. And the rules of writing tests in Drupal is that the class name should start with test and the name of your test. So it should be test Drupal hacks utility. It can be anything. And then it must extend the type of test you are trying to implement. So in our case, it is we are writing unit tests, so we are extending unit test case. And other thing is that the namespace for the test should be Drupal test, the name of the module and unit. We have seen namespace and other information about all the tests on this page. And then we must specify a little description, and other required thing is that we must specify under which group our test is coming. Then we if we have any basic requirement for our test to run, we must put it in a function called setup function, that is a protected function. And inside this function, we must write those things or such logic which we think is going to be repeated or needed by the test, because this function runs before all the test runs, and is a common function which would run for all the tests we would write inside this class. So we can write multiple tests inside this class, and test setup method will run for all those tests. I have a object called utility. Basically, I'm creating an object of utility class, and then I am performing some functions. Let's understand the basic logic. So we have seen the logic. It is returning true if the value passed to this function is having special characters, otherwise it is returning false. So let's run this function. Okay, I'm going to remove this and pass my Drupal test source unit. So it is returning false. Why it is returning? Because that test has failed. So let's debug. So this test, we can see the name of the test special has special characters fail. So this is failing because I'm checking if uh, this utility calling has special function which is passing the string, this is special string, is having any special character or not. And we are checking against true. So we are checking if the value returned by this function is equal to true or not. And this string is not containing any special character, so this function according to our logic must return false, and it is returning false. And false is not equals to true, so this assert equals is returning false, and our test is failing, which is good actually, which is intended. Now let's change it to false. Let's see if it will pass or fail. So it has passed. So my logic of this function is working fine. So it is working fine because now it is returning true. Let's check for another. Sorry, I'm okay. Test with special characters. Now I'm going to test with special characters. Earlier I was testing with simple a string without special characters. I'm going to now pass special characters. So this is special characters, uh, and pass special characters. So I'm passing a lot of special characters, and it must return true. Uh, let's run it. Okay, I have not see one good thing we have noticed here, that it is we have created a function with function name, and it did not the PHP did not recognize it. Why? Because the function name is not as per the rules. So it should start with test, and again s with special characters. As let's change it to something else without with special character. See, it is now running two tests. Let me give you a clear picture. So it ran two tests with two assertions, and both successfully passed. And if I would change it to so first, it will fail. You would have understood how we write test cases uh, in PHPUnit and Drupal. Similarly, we can write test cases for functional kernel build functional with JavaScript, functional JavaScript tests. So this is an example of functional test. Like I've told you, if we want to test for a scenario where my page is reachable or accessible with certain permission or not, I can do that with functional test. So this is a simple or example code for that. For other type of other type of tests, we can obviously drill down or check our core modules. For example, action module, we can see the tests. We can see functional tests, functional JavaScript, kernel, and unit type. All we can see for reference this action module. So this is how we write. Um, yeah. So this is how we write tests in Drupal. Okay, one more thing I wanted to show you guys. Here I'm using this minus c hyphen c sign to tell PHP unit to use configuration file, which is inside core directory. Now if I want to put my configuration file to any other location, how would I do that? So for that, let me go to my phpunit.xml file, and I would have to specify the location of that where my uh, bootstrapping of PHP unit is going to happen, or where my PHP unit.xml file is going to be in. So for that, what I have done, my file is inside core, so I'm going to move that core PHP unit XML to here. Now I would see the file here. Okay, so you would see the file here. And now let's for running the test now. Okay, earlier I was mentioning -c. Now I would simply remove that and would can run the test. So this is if we want to mention or place our put our configure php.xml file in any other location other than core directory. So this is all about automated testing in Drupal. Thank you.